I wonder. Game controllers are great. They're comfortable, responsive, and easy to use. But what if we took all those years of research and innovation, tossed them aside, and tried something that was never meant to be used for gaming? Something like the iPod click wheel. Apple introduced the wheel interface in 2001 with the original iPod's scroll wheel, and throughout the years it's evolved from a mechanical wheel to a solid-state touch sensor to one with buttons integrated underneath. The final form of the interface became known as the click wheel, and was first seen on the iPod mini in 2004. For a music player, the click wheel was an absolutely amazing interface because you could scroll infinitely yet precisely, while the buttons were all easily accessible and intuitively placed. But for playing games, it's way out of its comfort zone. Sure, at one point Apple did allow third parties to develop games on the iPod, but those were all built around a click wheel interface. Today though, we want to look at something much more sophisticated. I'm talking of course about Skyrim on the PC. Now, before we embark on our quest of total lunacy, I do want to clarify that this is in no way meant to be a practical tutorial on how to convert your old iPod into professional gaming controllers. Rather, this experiment is purely for the sake of novelty and possibly unconventional controllers for speedrun challenges. Basically, this is a really dumb idea. So, with that in mind, let's begin. First up, we need to find a way for the iPod's click wheel to talk with the PC. Now, we could take it apart and try to find a pin out and wire them to a USB controller, but it turns out the solution is much more simpler than that. Custom firmwares like RockBox have a feature called USB HID, which allows the iPod to act as an input device over USB, and that's what we'll be using. And so I got to work installing RockBox on my test iPod. Buried within the settings was an option to select between 4 different modes: media controller, mouse, browser, and presentation. Right off the bat, media mode won't work for what we're trying to do, because it doesn't correspond to any keystrokes. That leaves us with mouse, browser, and presentation. With a keystroke identifier, I was able to map out what each of the iPod's controls do, and this gives us all the keys we can play around with. Now, we've hit a bit of a snag here, because the iPod can only operate in one USB mode at a given time, and we need more than 5 buttons to play Skyrim. So, we're going to need another iPod. By setting the 2 iPods to different USB mode, we can double the number of keys available to us. With the keystrokes in hand, I got to remapping Skyrim's controls. Even with 2 iPods, we're still very limited in what we can do, but hey, that's part of the challenge. And that brings us to the moment you've been waiting for. Do iPod click wheels work with Skyrim? Well, sort of. With the left iPod set to mouse mode, I can use the 4 directional buttons to look around, but because these are digital buttons being mapped to an analog control, the movement is very janky and not smooth at all. As for movement, I hit another snag. You see, RockBox's USB HID implementation doesn't support holding down a button. If I mapped the walking controls to any of these buttons and held them down, it would act as if I only pressed them once, and the character would only take a tiny step forwards. So how do we work around this? Well, that's right, we have to scroll to walk. As for basic actions, they can be mapped to the iPod's buttons. More advanced things like menu navigation won't fully work, but other than that, we can move around and do stuff in Skyrim. And now, this is the part where you watch me suffer. Alright, let's try to play Skyrim with iPod controls. you may be wondering if this setup also works with other games too. Well, I wondered too, but sadly I was met with limited success. In Portal, I can move around, but with the inability to hold down a jump button and move at the same time, I couldn't get very far. In Resident Evil 4, I could get Leon to shimmy his way forward slowly, but turning and aiming was impossible. And on The Witcher 2, well, see for yourself. That being said, the PC wasn't the only platform this would work on. Since the iPod is acting as a USB device, anything that supports USB inputs would also work, like on an iPad. I can move the cursor around and click on the screen, but my movements were limited. iPadOS did have some accessibility features that let me do some custom mapping, but it was still far from practical. So, there you have it. Can you play Skyrim with a pair of iPods? Yes, but it's not a pleasant experience. Sure, you can move around and perform basic actions, but unless you enjoy getting RSI within the first 10 minutes, it's not fun at all. Heck, my watch even thought I was doing a workout when I was actually frantically trying to fight off bandits with the power of the click wheel. That being said, if you're into speedruns using unconventional controllers and want a new challenge, this might just be it. Just don't blame me when your thumbs drop off. With that said, I hope you've enjoyed watching me suffer through the literal Elder Scrolls, and I'll see you next time.